Hey guys, Michael Didier here. Thank you for joining me. Last week, we talked about the first covenant and the second covenant. Really misnomered being first covenant, second covenant. It's the renewed covenant in Ezekiel 31:31. Same covenant, still has Yehovah's statutes going, but this time it's written on our hearts. Well, so Moses, last week went back up to the mountain. He says he rose up early in the morning and went up to Mount Sinai. He came back, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in Moses' hand when he came down from the mountain. The next thing he talked about was what did we end with? Moses' face shining. And when he would go to the tent of meetings, the Ohel Moed, not the Mishkan, or the Mishkan, I think Mishkan, not the Tabernacle. The Tabernacle wasn't built yet. He went to the tent of meetings. It says when the pillar was over the tent of meetings and Moses went there, he took off his veil. And when he left, he put the veil back on because it upset the people. Well, today, finally, after 80 days plus, remember, Moses went up. In fact, I've got it here. He went up in chapter 19, just before he went up with the elders of Israel, 70 elders, and Aaron, was his sons there? I forget if his sons were there or not. And from there, he went up even further into the mountain, and they went back to base camp. So that was in Exodus 19. Finally, today, Exodus 35, they are now going back to what I would call base camp. They've been in kind of the high camp, all the men, all Israel's seed, for these 80 plus days. Now they're heading back. And here's what it says. It says, then Moses gathered all of Israel's seed's congregation. I'm putting this in a different way so that we can understand more clearly who it is that we're talking about. We're talking about Israel's seed's congregation. Those are the men who came with Israel's seed when we left Egypt, the heads of the mixed families. Mixed heads of families is what we call them, the Ezra Rav. Or Erev Rav is what it says. I've got it here on the right-hand side. So here we are now back in base camp. And I want to help you to understand when we're talking about, we haven't been talking about Israel's Seeds congregation the whole time, but now we are. Here is Exodus 12:19. And remember, the Ger who wants to keep the Passover is going to circumcise himself and all the men of his household. And when he does eat the Passover, he becomes the Ezra Haaretz, the firstborn of the land, the Ezra. How do you even define Ezra? They are the firstborn. My son, my firstborn, Israel. Let him go. Israel did not get to go from Egypt until they became Israel. Spiritually born Ezra men. Then they got to leave Israel. And here's what it says in verse 19 of Exodus 12. It says, for 7 days no leaven shall be found in your houses. since whoever eats what is leavened, that same person, remember we're talking about men, shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel. Now, here they're defining the congregation of Israel. Who is that? See, really, this probably says Israel's congregation. But it says whether he is a Ger or an Ezra Haaretz, a native of the land. Remember, it's all about the land and the seed. The land and the seed is what he told Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You got to become the seed, the spiritual seed. That is Israel. You don't become Israel by keeping the commandments of God. You become Israel by doing them and doing Passover in particular. That's the covenant that we're going to make with Yehovah that is going to make us as one born in the land, as Raharetz. So let's read the verse again with that understanding. Then Moses gathered all Israel's seeds congregation together and said to them, these are the words which Yehovah has commanded you to do. You. How many people assume that they are a you? How many people believe that somehow by believing in Jesus, they have become Israel? Where is the foundation for that in Yehovah's word? Peter says, even Peter says you have fallen because you do not know the oracles of Elohim. The words are the oracles of Elohim. We don't know them. We haven't studied them. We have talked numerous times about who Israel's seed is. They alone are the ones that went up to the mountain who received the commandments from Elohim. Yehovah only commands men on how they're supposed to live their lives, but not all men. He commands Israel's seed on how they're supposed to live their lives. And the Ger, who have left the country of their birth, join themselves to Israel's seed. Remember, it's the Ger, it's Israel and the Ger who dwell with them. And now the Ger are learning the commandments of Elohim. Moses is now talking to Israel and the Ger, giving him the words that Yehovah gave to them, gave to him to give to them. Let's say it correctly. There's a role of authority. Yehovah, Moses, you could say the priest, but they're not part of it yet. And then Ezra, the Israel's seed, and then the Ger. And then, of course, Israel's seed and the Ger, they have women and children and servants and all that. They're underneath their man. He's talking always to men. But like I say, it's not just any man. He's talking to Israel's seed and the Ger who have joined themselves to Israel's seed at this point. And look at what he says. The very next verse. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the 7th day shall be a holy day for thee. No, probably for Ya'al. I forget if it's thee or Ya'al. You know, you can check this just so you know. If you go to King James Version is really good about checking it. And so we can see that it shall be to you. It's Ya'al that is saying it. If it were to just each man individually, he would say thee, kind of like Yehovah said about the 10 Commandments. He spoke to each man separately on the mountain. So that's where you can always check and see who is it that he's really talking to. Sometimes you can't tell. It's a pronoun, but it's a pronoun that's not a very telling pronoun, because it could be the individual or the as a group. This happens to be the as a group. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the seventh day shall be a holy day for y'all. A Sabbath rest to Yehovah. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. Wow, pretty serious. Now, this is really interesting to me because this is, since we left Egypt, this is the 5th time that Yehovah has talked about his Sabbath. Tell me one other subject that Yehovah has mentioned this many times. There isn't one. The Sabbath to Yehovah is extremely important. And every time it says 6 and 1, 6 and 1, 6 and 1. Never changes. He goes on. You shall, it says, kindle no fire throughout your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Now, I've had difficulty for this verse for years. What does it mean? Do we not, say you live in Alaska. Do we not heat our homes in the wintertime? There's many people who have just wood heat. And of course, there was no electric heat at any time until recent times. Of course, we don't know about the antediluvian world, or not the antediluvian, Tartarians and some of those other places. Maybe we had electricity or some form of even free electricity at one point. But that's a subject for another day. My point is, what is going on here? He says, don't kindle a fire. Fire is ish. Interesting, it's the same word that's used for woman. Don't kindle, but kindle, here, I think I've got it. Kindle, here's kindle. To kindle, that is consume. To be brutish. So consume, we're talking about consume. Something being consumed by fire. It sounds to me like a fireplace, but, I can't find any other corroborating scriptures in the Torah that go along with don't kindle a fire. So, and again, I told you I've fallen back many times on things that I call him my friend. I've never met the man. What is his name? I'm forgetting. Oh, Glenn McWilliams. I've never met Glenn. But I feel like he's a friend because I learned from him for at least a couple of years. Every week. He did a very thorough job, made a nice paper every week and did a video. And yeah, it was really good. But here's what he said. And I thought, well, maybe this makes sense. It says the meaning of this passage can be best understood in the context in which it is given. This final law of the Sabbath is a part of the revelation of the construction of the tabernacle. This whole chapter is about the beginning of the tabernacle. Therefore, it should be understood as specifically speaking to the labor of the tabernacle's construction. No forging, refining, or smithing was to be done on the Sabbath, not even for a noble and holy a cause as the building of the tabernacle. Take it for what it is. Does that make sense to you? I could see it. I don't know any other way to explain this Kindle business. But again, I don't see it anywhere else either. A lot of times you can go to the TSK, is the Treasury of Scriptural Knowledge, and they will talk about this, and they have about Sabbath. So that's about Sabbath. That's really not about kindling. This is talking about baking. Bake what you will bake today. Boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves the remains. See, that could work with kindling a fire. But again, what about heat? What was the other ones that they had here? Numbers. This was about the man who was collecting wood on the Sabbath. And then here's Isaiah 58. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing pleasure on the Sabbath, that's really not pertinent. That's about Sabbath. That's not about kindling. So there's really not much to be found in the Torah about this kindling business. You could argue 16 has a little bit. I don't know what to do with it. Does that mean we're not supposed to turn on light bulbs? We need more information. What does it say in Isaiah 53? I forget how it starts. Let me just go there. Not Isaiah 53. Isaiah 52, maybe? Oh, it had to do with a people on the mountain proclaim. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I wasn't prepared. It's just a thought that came into my mind. It had to do with when the witness or appears, we will all know eye to eye or something along those lines. When Yehovah brings back Zion, we'll all know eye to eye, or there'll be somebody or some people that will be representative of Yehovah that will give us kind of a download on how to actually keep the statutes and judgments and ordinances of Yehovah. Perhaps you can find that. I didn't find it right offhand. I was thinking it was Isaiah 52, but I may be wrong. Okay, kindle a fire. Verse 4. And Moses spoke to Israel's seeds congregation, the Ezra and the Ger, saying, this is the thing which Yehovah has commanded, saying, take from among y'all an offering. The word offering here, they use these religious words. It's a present. It's a tarumah. Remember we talked about a tarumah in 30, about the half shekel for every man 20 years of age and older. We were supposed to bring a present to Yehovah. That's the tarumah. We're bringing a present. Take from among you a tarumah to Yehovah. Whoever is of a willing heart, let him bring an offering, a tarumah, to Yehovah. Now we're going to list a bunch of things. And this is where a lot of people have difficulties. Many women want to be Israel. They picture themselves with a staff and a shield and fighting off the enemy. Folks, a woman is not a man. A woman does not go to war. Those are all false images in your minds. In the 10th commandment, it was talking about not coveting your neighbor's house, your neighbor's woman. if he's talking about coveting your neighbor's woman, who's he talking to? He's talking to Israel's seed men. He goes on. House, woman, servants, stock, and anything that is your neighbor's. What is that saying? Oh, you know what? This might be hurtful for many of you to hear. A woman is a possession of the man. It's the man that's bringing the things that we're going to enumerate here, not the women. Now, there is going to be some things that a woman can bring. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I want you to understand that as a, what does it say? Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. That's what a woman is to her man. Flesh of his flesh, bone of his bone. She's like a hand, an arm, a mold, feet. She is his. She follows her man. She doesn't go off and do her own thing. Oh, I know this is difficult for people to hear. But if you will open your mind to some of these ideas, I can help you. He says, all the men shall appear before Yehovah. Never even talks about the women. When he talked about keeping the Sabbath, he didn't talk about the woman, did he? He said, you, your sons, your daughters, your ger, and your servants, even your animals. Didn't talk about the woman. Why? Because she is he. Your desire shall be for your man, and he shall rule over you. Hasn't changed. So, let's keep this in mind as we're talking about what's being brought. Because it's easy to be manipulated into thinking that there's something going on that isn't going on. And thankfully, we're going to do just a pinch of Yasher today. And I think it will help us see a little bit more clearly what we're talking about. So let me go on. He says, whoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it as a gift to Yehovah. Gold, silver, bronze, blue, purple, scarlet, thread, fine linen, goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, badger skins, acacia wood, oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. All who are gifted artisans among y'all shall come and make all that Yehovah has commanded. Remember, he's including the ger with this right now. Not just Israel's seed, it's Israel's seed's congregation. He goes on. The tabernacle. Now, this is one of the first times that we're starting to see the Mishkan. Here it is, the Mishkan. This is the tabernacle. It has a tent, an ohel. Remember, up until now, we've been talking about, they translated it as tabernacle, but it's the tent of ohel. It's the tent of meetings, not the tabernacle. So it gets a little confusing if we don't dig into the Hebrew to understand the difference. The tabernacle, its tent. The tabernacle has a tent, going to keep it dry. Its coverings, it's got 3 other coverings besides the tent. Its clasps, its boards, its bars, its pillars, its sockets. Remember, we talked about all these at length when we went through many of the chapters earlier on. And we're actually going to go through a bunch even in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try and go through 2 chapters next couple of weeks because it's kind of a repeat. The ark, its poles with its mercy seat, and the veil of the coverings, the table and its poles, all its utensils. He says, and the showbread. Why would he say, and the showbread? We don't need showbread until much later. You can't make the showbread ahead of time like you can make the incense. Or the anointing oil ahead of time. I mean, it'll spoil. I think it's funny that it's included. My personal opinion. Also, the lampstand. Oh, you know what? I can probably make this bigger. Yes, how's that? Showbread. Also, the lampstand for the light. Its utensils. Its lamps. And the oil for the light. The incense altar. Its poles. The anointing oil. The sweet incense. And the screen for the door of the entrance of the tabernacle. The altar of burnt offering. We're going from inside to outside. The altar of burnt offerings with its bronze grating, its poles, all its utensils, and the laver for its base. The hangings for the court, its pillars, their sockets, and the screen for the gate of the court. This is the big 75 by 150 feet court that goes around the tabernacle that no ladies go into, incidentally, unless they're in trouble. The pegs of the tabernacle, the pegs of the court and their tents, the garments of ministering for ministering in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron, the priest, and the garments for his sons to minister as priests, and all Israel's seeds congregation, the Ezra and the Ger who dwell with them, departed from the presence of Moses. They're going to go get the stuff. And everyone came whose heart was stirred, and everyone whose spirit was willing. Who's coming back? The Ezra and the Ger. And they brought Yehovah offerings, presents for the work of the tabernacle. I didn't look up that word. I'm sure it's not offerings, it's presents. Presents for the, what do I do with it now? Brought offerings for the work of the tabernacle of meetings. Now, isn't it interesting that here they're calling it the tabernacle of meetings? Tabernacle of meetings. It's kind of like they're taking the Ohel Moed and doing the Mishkan Moed. Let's find out if it says Mishkan Moed. I doubt that it does. It probably says Ohel Moed, but now we're talking about something entirely different, aren't we? Here's the word. I think you've got the wrong verse. Let me go back. No, I have the right verse. So what does it say? Oh, here, the tabernacle. Kodesh, Moed. There is no tent. They're calling the tabernacle. See, this is why you got to look it up. Just you ask yourself, does that make sense? We have the Ohel Moed, and now we're having the Mishkan, but yet this is saying the tent of tabernacles. So it looks like to me that we're talking about a meeting place. I mean, they're calling it a tabernacle. All right, well, see, these are things that you just have to look up to get more understanding. And, kind of file it away as a question of things that we need to get answered in the future, perhaps. So it says, everyone came whose heart was stirred, and everyone whose spirit was willing. And they brought, They brought, Israel's seed and the Ger brought, for they own all the stuff. The ladies don't own anything. They own the ladies. They brought to Yehovah a present for the work of the meeting place, for all its service, and for the holy garments. And they came. Look what it says. And they came. Both the men, ish. It says the definite article, enoshim, the men. Enoshim is the plural form of ish. And the nashim, nashim, the women. They left out the definite article. Why? I don't know. As many that had a willing heart, and brought earrings and nose rings, rings and necklaces, all jewelry of gold. That is, every man who made an offering of gold to Yehovah. Is he saying that the women were giving it, but the men were bringing it? Remember, it is the men's ultimately. She is the men's she is her man's ultimately. So what she has is his. Again, that doesn't go well in today's ideas, but today's ideas are not going to be tomorrow's ideas. Our world is changing dramatically right now. We have learned lies, worthless and unprofitable things. A woman is not a man. A man is not a woman. Duh, go figure. And every man with whom was found blue, purple, or scarlet thread, fine linen, goat's hair, red skins of rams, and badger skins, brought them. The men brought them. That's the word, ish. There's no lady ish. Everyone who offered an offering brought a present of silver or bronze, brought Yehovah presents. Let's double check it. Oh, here, I already had it. Who brought or came with presents. Now, this is what we're talking about. They brought or came with presents. This, I say brought or came. The word that we're talking about is this word right here that has to do with come. They say offered. I hate those religious words. They're bringing a present to Yehovah for the building of his tabernacle. Let's take out the religious words. I guess since I have a comment on that, I ought to highlight that particular verse. It goes on. Now, here we're talking about what women can bring. Look what it says. They wrote all the women. Wrong. This is not what it says. It says, and every woman. And it doesn't say women, it says, and every woman. This is not enoshim, this is isha. Some translations get it right. Look what this says. This is Darby. And every woman that was wise-hearted spun with her hands and brought what she had spun, the blue and the purple and the scarlets and the bisis. I don't even know what that is. Here's another translation. This was done well. Talking about each woman, every woman with a wise-hearted spun. there's different ways of saying it. They said it here, every woman whose heart was stirred. Now, I think this has to do with their ability to do it more so. But it says she spun, or she had spun. She brought. Here they're saying they all brought. The all's not there. There's no all. But it says they all brought what they had spun. Now we're talking about each woman individually. And keep in mind, this is labor that the woman is doing for Yehovah's tabernacle. It's still going to go through her man. Is she going to bring it? I don't think so. I think it's going to be brought by the men. But the next verse says exactly the same thing. This is all, and all, call is all. But this says, and all women. So we have to translate this as, and every woman. But now in the very next verse it says, and all ha-enoshim, or ha-nashim, plural form of women, all the women, and all the women whose hearts stirred with wisdom spun yarn and goat's hair. Now, does this mean that all the women did it? No, it's all the women whose hearts were stirred. They're the ones that did it. Again, don't take some of this stuff literally. We've got to actually engage our brains and ask what's going on. The rulers, verse 27, brought onyx stones and stones to be set in the ephod and the breastplate. I guess these were maybe the richer men. Does it make sense that the leaders, what do they call them? The rulers. Are the rulers the richest men? Is being rich what makes you a ruler? I hope not. Maybe being wise and being a ruler, Yehovah is going to bless your work. I hope that's what it is. The rulers brought onyx stones and stones to be set in the ephod. There's a bunch of different types of things that we saw were going to be put into the ephod. And in the breastplate, and spices, and oil for the light, for the anointing oil, and for sweet incense. What it says, Israel's seed brought they put a free will offering, this is difficult. I found this was a really good translation. And every man, this is a literal interpretation of the Bible, literal version. Oh, here I got it here. Literal translation of the Holy Scriptures. And every man and woman whose heart made them willing to bring all the work. This is not the items, this is the work. Made them willing to bring all the work which Yehovah commanded to be done by the hands of Moses. Look what it says now. Israel's seed brought a willing offering to Yehovah. So the ladies, they did some of the work. And it was Israel's seed who brought the stuff to Yehovah. It doesn't even say the Ger were the ones who brought it to Yehovah. It says Israel's seed were the ones who brought it to Yehovah. Well, I thought about this for a while, and I think it kind of fits into the command structure. Remember, we've got Yehovah, Moses, Israel's seed, Ger, and then women and children after that. But this fits our chain of command. The congregation of Israel's seed bring their free will offering to them, Israel's seed, to them, and Israel's seed brings it to Yehovah. the last time we saw this wording was in Exodus 16, 1 and 2. Yeah, let's read it. And they journeyed from Elam, and all the congregation of Israel's seed came to the wilderness. Israel's seed's congregation came to the wilderness. Remember, this is the Ezra and the Ger, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they departed from the land of Egypt. It says, then the congregation of Israel's seed complained against Moses and Aaron. This is the Ger, and possibly Israel's seed, complaining against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Then look what it says. And Israel's seed said to them, who's them? Moses and Aaron. You see, it's a top-down authority, but it's also a bottom-up authority. The congregation, the Ger, are complaining to, probably the women were complaining to their men. Then the Ger complained to Israel's seed. Then Israel's seed complains to Aaron and Moses. Okay, well, you get the idea. Understanding authority, who has it, who doesn't, is very important in understanding the scriptures. We're changing gears. And Moses said to who? Israel's seed, B'nai Israel. Many times it says the children of Israel, like it does here. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Ezra men. And Moses said to Israel's seed, see, Yehovah has called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah. You know, I think it's interesting to see where these people come from. It says the tribe of Judah, Hur, Uri, Bezalel. How do they fit into the picture? So we talk about Judah, then Hur, then Uri, then Bezalel. Bezalel was Hur's grandson. Let me show you how it all fits together. You know, line upon line, precept upon precept. Here a little, there a little. That's how we understand the scriptures. You got to search. Don't find a soundbite and think that you've got the truth. Probably you don't. Especially if you're going to use an English translation of the silly thing. Here, the sons of Judah were Onan, and Shelah. We knew that. Remember that and Onan died. Shelah wasn't given to Tamar, so she took the seed for herself, and Tamar had Perez and Zerah. So now Perez is going to have Hezron. I'm down here right now. Going to have Hezron. Also the sons of Hezron who were born to him were Aramel, Ram, and Chalobe. Well, Chalobe is Caleb. So you see, Judah had Perez. Perez had Hezron, and Hezron had Caleb. We're already to Caleb. Caleb is going to be one of our characters in our story. It says, and Caleb, the son of Hezron, there's Hezron, the son of Caleb, had sons, not children, sons. Yeled. Who are the sons? It says, by Azubah, his woman, where it says wife. There is no word for wife in Torah. It's his woman. She is his woman. And Yeharot. And by Yeharot. Now these were her sons. Whose sons? I don't know. Azubah or Yeharot. I don't know. So, but she had 3 sons. But then it says, and Azubah died. And Caleb took Ephrath as his woman. Probably Ephrat. might be a froth, as his woman. And she bore who? Her. There's her. You see, we're only talking a few generations before we're down to her, and then Uri, and then Bezalel. Now, I think it's interesting, in your face, in fact, that he had two women in his life. When one died, he took another woman. Still had two women in his life. See, we forget these kinds of things. Does a man have more than one wife? Yeah, he can. And even in the New Testament, it talks about the elders and the deacons, which there is no elders and deacons in Torah, being husbands of one wife. What does that mean? Does that mean that some people have more than one wife? Of course. We just don't see it because our minds don't think that way. It doesn't fit our ideas. And so we wash it away. But here we are. Azubah died. Caleb took Ephrat as his woman and bore her. And her begat Uri, and Uri begat Bezalel. This is the Bezalel that we're talking about right now. I think it's interesting to see how it all pieces together. 31. And he was filled with Spirit Elohim, Ruach Elohim. Remember in Genesis 1, it was Ruach Elohim, which hovered over the face of the earth. Yehovah is Spirit. And those who worship him, obey him, follow his commandments, do so in spirit and in truth. This is why Abraham was following an invisible Elohim. This is why I follow an invisible Elohim and keep his statutes and judgments and ordinances. I'm not following the laws of the land. They're not for me. I have no covenant with them. Oh. I went through a police checkpoint the other day. You know, it's surprising what you can do if you have a little bit of knowledge. This guy pulled me over. Checkpoint. Oh, we're just checking to make sure everybody has the proper IDs. I says, why are you pulling me over? What purpose do you have for pulling me over? Oh, we're just checking driver's license proof. I'm not a driver. I'm not a driver. I'm a traveler. See, people don't know what a driver is. You've been tricked. Faked out. I asked to talk to the sheriff. Had me wait 5 minutes. I had a gun sitting on my seat. He told me to wait 5 minutes. And at 5 minutes, he came back to me and said, you're good to go. Couldn't say Mr. DDA because he didn't know my name. He never saw anything. But I'll bet you everybody that went through that checkpoint that day gave up their information. It's an illegal search and seizure, at least an illegal search. What purpose do they have to check your IDs? We do things because everybody does it. That's why we do many of the things that we do. We don't think. We don't engage our brains. Well, that's a freebie. 35. And he was filled with Spirit Elohim, in wisdom and understanding and knowledge and all manner of workmanship. This guy knew his stuff. To design artistic works, to work in gold and silver and bronze, in cutting jewels for settings. He had the bulk of the work, was responsible for him. In carving wood, even the wood, and the work of all manner of artistic workmanship. And he has put in his heart, Yehovah has put in his heart the ability to teach. And to teach. He has put in his heart. He and Aholeva, son of Akishmak of the tribe of Dan. This was the man who is going to do all the tapestry work. And in fact, here it is right here, last verse. He has filled them both men, with skill in all manner of work of the engraver, and the designer and the tapestry maker, in blue, purple, scarlet thread, and fine linen, and of the weaver, those who do every work and who design artistic works. Well, that is the chapter that we needed to cover for today. I don't think that probably went too long. Thank you for joining me. I hope, think about some of these things that I try to bring to you. These are gems. These are things that I did not find after 15 minutes of studying the Word. These are things that took me thousands of hours to discover through 10 years, 15 years of daily study. I can help you, but you have to be open to hear what I have to say. You're going to see as we go through the scriptures, it's all going to make sense. We just have to open our eyes and our minds and our hearts to what Yehovah actually has to say about the duties and responsibilities of a man and a man's woman. All right, I'm going to stop here. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. And we'll see you next time. Bye now.